We did our 2020s redraft, our 2010s redraft, and now buckle up for the ultimate 2000s NBA redraft.
No. It's not pretty much number twos because we have a definitive number one.
Tensions were high. Takes were hot.
He was the one who had like single-digit numbers in a game 7.
Corby and Cam debated for hours. No, I can't do this.
He averaged 33 against Tim Duncan.
And just a heads up, here's how the redraft works. We are redrafting players who were drafted in the 2000s decade. So drafted from 2000 to 2009. 14 picks. Timestamps below. Hope you enjoy.
With the number 1 overall pick, I am picking LeBron James in the 2000s redraft.
With the number 1 overall pick, I am also picking LeBron James in the 2000s redraft.
We got a fake Warriors fans over here, folks.
Oh, fake Warriors fan. Maybe LeBron's going to be on the Warriors at the end of this offseason. Maybe I know things that you don't. Maybe I'm just in tune with the conversations.
Classic
maybe
LeBron
I'm
joining
tapped
a
in.
super team.
Maybe I'm
I
tapped
wouldn't
in.
be surprised.
Yeah. You know what? Yeah.
Let's be real. There's nothing to talk about with LeBron James. He is the number 1 pick. He is one of the greatest players of all time. Let's just go ahead and do number 2. With the number 2 overall pick, I have Stephen Curry.
With the number 2 overall pick, I also have Stephen Curry, the second greatest player of this generation.
Let's just go ahead and talk about it. You have KD number 3.
Yes.
If you talk about just talent specifically, Kevin Durant has the argument to be better than Stephen Curry, but it's just the pedigree. It's just KD had to join the Stephen Curry Warriors. It is Stephen Curry getting a championship, 2 actually, without Kevin Durant. Like, if you just talk about talent and how consistent they've been and how good they are right now, I think Kevin Durant right now is a better player. Like, he has aged better than Stephen Curry, but it doesn't matter because at their peaks, he could actually lead them to a championship.
I mean, Kevin Durant, by all accounts, should be better than Stephen Curry based on his physical ability and everything given to him at the height that he has and everything that he's worked for. Shaquille O'Neal should be better than Michael Jordan. Just you know what I mean? Like, sometimes a player is better than another player. Maybe Kevin Durant should be better. Maybe Kevin Durant produces more at an older age, but Stephen Curry's had the results. He has 2 MVPs. KD has 1. Like, what I want to talk about more is that these 3 players are probably the best 3 players of any generation of basketball that we've ever had. You know, in terms of the top 3 players, to get to witness these guys through their primes all at the same time, which is crazy to say about LeBron James because he was drafted, 5 years earlier than both of these guys? 4 years earlier than KD. It's crazy that we got to witness all of these guys in their prime, dueling it out, going head to head. All of them played each other in the finals at some point. Well, I guess KD and Steph didn't, but they played each other in the conference finals. We're all really lucky to have gotten to witness this era of basketball.
Yeah, it's incredible. And the only unfortunate thing with Kevin Durant is like that 21 Nets team, they should have won the NBA Finals. It just sucks that James Harden got hurt, or he played in Game 7 and then sucked. And then Kyrie Irving didn't even play any games after like Game 2, I think. Like, Kevin Durant should have another championship. It just, when you can't utilize the years that you don't have an injured roster, that's when it really sucks. Because Kevin Durant did choke sometimes when it really mattered. But sometimes he was really good and the injuries just kind of...
I mean, should have, could have, would have. Steph, you could say, should have 5 rings because if KD doesn't get hurt and Klay doesn't get hurt, then maybe Steph has a 5th ring. And maybe Steph has a 5th ring without KD playing in that series because he gets hurt in Game 5 if Klay stays healthy. So who knows? But Kevin Durant, obviously an incredible talent, one of the only guys to really be truly compared to LeBron throughout his career in a legitimate way. Steph obviously is the second greatest player of this generation when it comes to the accomplishments plus the output. Statistically, the only unanimous MVP ever, changed the game of basketball, and LeBron James. We know LeBron James.
Yeah. So with the 4th pick, I'm picking in the redraft Dwayne Wade.
I am also picking Dwayne Wade at 4th. Now, I thought I was going to have to argue with you about this, so I'm actually kind of glad. But my reasoning for having Dwayne Wade here, because the other name right beneath him, I would assume you have him too, James Harden at 5th.
I don't.
You don't? Okay, so we'll get to that then. But Dwayne Wade at 4th, the reason why I have him there, he's done something that only the top 2 guys in this redraft have done, and that is lead a team to a championship. And none of the other guys below him have done that. Now, you could argue MVPs. There's a couple MVPs below him, but Dwayne Wade consistently, offensively and defensively, was a top 3, top 4 player in the NBA. Often looked at as one of the top 4 shooting guards of all time, I'd say, pretty consistently. He's, you know, him, AI, and Harden are kind of mixed around a lot, but they're all in that conversation. Dwayne Wade, incredible talent. 2006 Finals was absolutely legendary.
I will say though, 2006 carried Dwayne Wade. Like, obviously he's a guard who could also play defense. He also showed up in big moments, but like, let's be real. Like, the championships with LeBron, it was with LeBron. It was with Chris Bosh. And like he also was falling off a little bit.
But I would
I
would disagree with that because I would say 2010 he had a legitimate case to win MVP.
Okay, 2010
averaging 30 points a game right before LeBron came and joined him. So
I'll give you that, but I still don't think it was a big enough moment where like he would be over a James Harden or like these other names I'm about to talk about.
I mean, he still leads all shooting guards all time in steals. I mean, he is one of the best defensive players at the shooting guard position ever at 6'3", which is super impressive, right? He's the same height as Steph Curry, and he's ended up being one of the best defensive players ever, while also, averaging 30 multiple times in huge playoff series.
But if we're gonna value defense, then at pick 5, I have Chris Paul. Chris Paul, unfortunately, has been injured in some moments and unfortunately has fallen short in some moments. But like overall in the playoffs has been a riser. He's been a defensive player, an offensive player, and every single team that he leads, like he actually elevates all of his teammates. Versus a James Harden, who, by the way, in the regular season, obviously peaks higher than Chris Paul. And honestly, in the playoffs, he consistently gets there because he hasn't never missed a year in the playoffs. And I understand James Harden is this amazing offensive talent, but when we talk about the rest of these guys on this list, we're talking about guys who weren't able to do it as a number one option. And I'm going to take the guy who could defend, a guy who could pass, a guy who made DeAndre Ayton look like a good center. Now, at the time, when the Phoenix Suns made the NBA Finals, I thought that Devin Booker was the obviously better player because Chris Paul's elevation of his teammates were overrated because DeAndre Ayton was just that good. DeAndre Ayton sucks as a basketball player. So the fact that Chris Paul was able to elevate him, I am giving him that credit. I think that
he sucks now.
He
right?
made DeAndre Jordan an All-NBA center. Think about that.
The voters made DeAndre Jordan an All-NBA center. We all know he didn't deserve to be All-NBA that year, first of all. Second of all due respect to Chris Paul. Chris Paul's the next guy on my list. He's number 6, just to spoil it ahead. But there's a guy above him that you are disrespecting. We just recently, within the last couple months, did a video repicking the last 10 MVPs, and we gave this guy multiple MVPs. You gave him, I think, more MVPs than I gave him in that video. He's averaging 40. James Harden is that guy. James Harden is the guy who has been one of the most dynamic and explosive offensive engines, not just of this era, not just of these 2000s players, ever. And you are going to sit here. I understand Chris Paul is an elevator. I understand Chris Paul is the point god. That's why I have him at 6th above another guy that also won MVP. But you're going to tell me Chris Paul is better than James Harden?
Yes.
All time? You're going to sit here and tell me that the guy who averaged 36 and 8 for a whole season is not as good as Chris Paul?
Chris Paul had a decade-plus long prime. We're talking about on the New Orleans Hornets, he was amazing. We're talking about the Clippers, he was amazing. We're talking about the Suns, he was amazing. James Harden had that cool 5-year peak where he was scoring, he was doing all that. He never led his team to the finals. Next to Joel Embiid, he wasn't good. Next to Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, he barely played and then gave up on the team, which, yes, there were some obstacles, but obviously the Kyrie Irving thing was going to go away. Obviously the Kevin Durant being injury prone was going to go away. And James Harden gave up on that. So then he joined Kawhi Leonard and he joined Paul George and that didn't end up working. And he was the one who had like single digit numbers in a game 7. Chris Paul, even if Chris Paul had single digits in a game 7, at least he's elevating his teammates more than James Harden does. At least he defends better than James Harden does. We are at the point in this redraft where we're not talking about number 1s. It's pretty much number 2s. Chris Paul as the number 2 because Devin Booker was the number 1 scoring option.
No. It's not pretty much number 2s because we have a definitive number 1 right here in James Harden that you're putting below him. It's not pretty much number 2s. It's not pretty much all these guys that are like, oh, the level below. It's an MVP, a guy that should have multiple MVPs. Who was the first option when him and Chris Paul played together?
But should he have that playoff success? No, because he was always dropped. And I understand that James Harden dropping in the playoffs isn't the craziest thing because his regular season stats were ridiculous. But Chris Paul made the finals, and then Chris Paul was amazing in those Bucks finals.
Chris Paul made the finals.
Devin Booker's
the
one who
made the finals with as the second best player on the team. How many finals has Chris Paul led a team to? How many finals has Chris Paul led a team to?
Was he the second best because he was the better defender than Booker? He's the better playmaker. He did everything better but score, and then Devin Booker couldn't score in the finals.
How many finals has Chris Paul led a team to? How many Western Conference finals has Chris Paul led a team to?
One finals.
One
finals.
James Harden led the team to that finals. He led the team.
Yes. He was averaging 20 points per game and like 9 assists, which is better. I'm sorry. It's better than Booker's like 26 points per game with whatever, like 4 assists. It is. He made DeAndre Ayton look good. Can we give credit to that? Can we make... I don't remember the contract situation, but I feel like he got Jay Crowder paid.
James Harden got Clint Capella paid.
I'm going to give him credit to that. That's why I have him next on my list at 6th. But you can't, and I understand, one thing I will give James Harden credit for is he was available. And Chris Paul was not available, whether that's his fault or not. But I feel like every time Chris Paul was in the playoffs, he did elevate his team. He was really good. And it just sucks that it's just more unfortunate. And then, yeah, they made the finals and Chris Paul got sold. Chris Paul averaged like 4 points per game less than Booker. Way more efficient, way more assists. He was playing defense. Obviously, he fouled on that Giannis lob. But like that didn't give the game away. You know what gave the game away was Devin Booker was the one who turned the ball over in one of the biggest finals moments ever because they were up 2-0 and blew that lead.
I mean, hey, you don't want to get double teamed in practice. You're not ready for it in the game.
So that's the thing. Like at the time, I wasn't giving Chris Paul credit, and I will take fault to that because now we've looked back and Booker hasn't gotten much better, and DeAndre Ayton has looked bad, and obviously Mikal Bridges has looked good. But like overall, Chris Paul did elevate that Suns team. Chris Paul elevates every single teammate and every single team that he plays for. So I'm gonna give credit to that. Now I'm not gonna blame you for James Harden because he did have a regular season peak. And he did have a couple good playoffs. I'll give him credit. In 2020, they decided to trade for Russell Westbrook next to James Harden, which makes zero sense. And James Harden was amazing, not only in that regular season, but in the playoffs. But the reason James Harden does not have a championship is because, honestly, his peak was not very long. Chris Paul was amazing for like 10 plus years. More than that, probably. But James Harden, we talk about a dude who sucked this year in the playoffs because this was the time for him to redeem himself. I understand that he's old and Chris Paul is out of the league, but obviously Chris Paul has been in the league for like 4+ years longer than James Harden. I just think James Harden had his chance in my head. I understand James Harden does not care what I say, but like in my head, James Harden has his chance to redeem himself this year if he made the finals, but he decided to stink it up versus the New York Knicks.
I mean, that's fair. What I will say is that Chris Paul was never at any point in an argument for best player in the NBA. Now, whether that's because he played...
Was James Harden?
Yes.
No.
No. We're not doing this. Yes.
LeBron James
Harden was in argument for being the best player in the NBA.
In argument.
Because at one point in time, LeBron James wasn't even looked at as the best player in the league. It was Steph Curry who was looked at as the best player in the league.
What year are you talking about?
2016-17.
James Harden was not in competition for best player in the league. 16-17? Wait. So are we talking about this one
Who finished second in MVP voting? Harden or LeBron?
Who finished first?
Who beat LeBron in MVP voting the year after?
There's Steph. There's Russ. Kevin Durant was amazing in 2017.
Okay, but James Harden won the MVP over LeBron the year after.
He did win it because honestly, James Harden, when it comes to the regular season, was the best player in 2018. Because I give him the regular season credit, but when we talk about the top 6 picks in the 2000s NBA redraft, there's a lot of playoff talk that has to go into it. I'm not saying Chris Paul is this playoff riser, but James Harden is a playoff dropper.
I'm just saying Chris Paul never at any point in time while being definitively the best player on the team, led his team to even the conference finals. And James Harden has done that. Now, you can say what James Harden has done in the conference finals and what he's done in those big moments when he's gotten there has not measured up, but he got there.
How many times did James Harden make the conference finals, though? Because Chris Paul, maybe it's not definitive that he was the best player on the Suns, but he at least made the finals when it was argumentative.
I think he's made the conference finals
What?
4 times.
4? Yeah. So James Harden has made it 2 times by himself. You're using the term definitive, and I get it because James Harden was far and away the best player, but Chris Paul was argumentatively the best player in that 21 finals run. And he was the one kind of doing the heavy and carrying. I just, even with all that being said, because by the way, these Clippers teams, if Chris Paul just didn't get hurt, they had a chance. Versus James Harden, besides like one Nets series, which by the way, he played in game 7 and sold Kevin Durant. He went like 3 for 17 from the field. I get playing through an injury. Like you can give that an excuse, but something like 3 for 17, I want to look it up. Okay, you know what? Fine. I'll give Harden credit. He went 5 for 17 in that game 7 with the Nets, but I think Chris Paul actually elevates his teammates, and I think Kobe Bryant was right about James Harden. I think James Harden, the play style that he does, because he is not good enough and because he doesn't contribute to defense, like you could say Shea plays a similar play style kind of to James Harden. It's just that Shea is not a negative on defense, and Shea is so efficient that he can get away with it versus James Harden can't because he's never been efficient in the playoffs.
Well, let's hope Luka can break the mold because I'd love to see him win a ring and he fits into that mold. But we talked a lot about James Harden versus Chris Paul. I want to give Chris Paul his flowers real quick because I also have him at 6th. I think Chris Paul is severely underrated still. Me having him at 6 sounds like, I mean, I guess given everything we just talked about, it probably sounds a little disrespectful, but I genuinely think Chris Paul is one of the best point guards of all time. I think he gets disrespected to an insane degree. I think he is, he is the prototypical point guard. He is the perfect point guard in terms of what the position was designed to be. Now, obviously, we have guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Steph Curry, and all these different scorers that play the point guard position now. But when you talk about a facilitator and a scorer, a guy that can give you an efficient 20 a game while also getting 10 assists a night, Chris Paul is a guy who a lot of players have modeled their game after, guys that have had a lot of success in recent years, Tyrese Halliburton being one of them, and it's for good reason. His model is a model of success. It is a perfect piece to fit into any team, and there's a reason why every team that's had him, or every team that had him for a significant period of time, probably between 2008 and 2022, 21, had a really high degree of success and more success with him than they did without him because he is a positive on the court and he is the perfect complementary piece next to any scoring player or any lob threat or any shooter or anybody.
Yeah, because whether he's better than Harden or not, he is the best pass-first point guard of all time. Well, okay, sorry, Magic Johnson is a pass-first point guard, but he's a 6'9" freak. Of all the short kings, it is Chris Paul. Also, is Isaiah Thomas? I don't want to get into it, but is Isaiah Thomas pass-first?
I'd say so. I'd say most point guards up until really recently have been pass-first point guards.
Yeah, because I'd give it to IT.
You get into the Derrick Roses, the Russell Westbrooks, the Steph Currys, like most of those guys before them were pass-first.
Okay, number 7, a little controversial. I have Dwight Howard.
That's interesting. I do not have Dwight Howard. At number 7, I have Russell Westbrook. For the simple reason of he has an MVP.
And Dwight Howard led his team to the NBA Finals one year, something Russell Westbrook could never do. If we're being honest, I love Russ. I was actually a Russ fan in his prime. The problem is, really looking back, he was a very inefficient point guard. He turned the ball over like crazy. I don't think he was a player that could really win in the playoffs. I'll be honest. Like, he was a very fun player. He's a very entertaining player. And if he is your favorite player in the NBA of all time, I would totally understand that. But in terms of winning, in terms of greatness, Dwight Howard was a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. He led his team to the finals and unfortunately lost to, was it the Lakers that year?
It was the Lakers that year.
Kobe Bryant, which is, one of the greatest players of all time. If I am building a team, I do not want Russell Westbrook. Now, I'm not going to discredit him. It's not like I don't have him on the list. It's not like I don't have him for a couple more spots. I think I have him next. I actually do have him next because his MVP year was great. I think his absolute peak was amazing, but his absolute peak was only like 2 years, in my opinion. It was like 2015 and 2017. And what do they have in common? He wasn't playing with Kevin Durant. I think he works best as a number 1, but as a number 1, he'll never win you a championship. And you could say the same about Dwight, but I think Dwight played really well with a James Harden. He played really well with all the help that he had on the Magic. I think Russ played amazing. Russ is one of the greatest floor raisers of all time, but he's never leading you to that chip.
I'm not going to get too mad at this. Maybe because you already wore me down with that last one. So kudos to you. Energy kind of low. But I think that these are guys in a very similar position. These are two guys that would dominate a lot of eras of NBA basketball, but were probably born into and played into the worst era for them to actually be as dominant as they could have been in other eras. Because if you talk about who Dwight Howard could have been in previous eras, or if you talk about who Russell Westbrook could have been in previous eras, right? They would be hailed as all-time guys. When we look at them now, you kind of have to fight for their place in history. I think they're both top 75 guys, or maybe Dwight didn't make the top 75 team. He should have. He's a 3-time, 4-time depoy, something like that. He is one of the most dominant forces to have ever played the game. He's on that sort. I mean, imagine Ben Wallace with an offensive bag. That's what Dwight Howard is. So I really think that both these guys are incredible, deserve their respect. I'm not too mad at you putting Dwight over Russ. My reasoning for it is just that what Russell Westbrook did in terms of output, was often mixed at times with the team he has. So when he had his best seasons, he didn't have a good team around him. And then you could say he didn't capitalize when he should have, when he had a good team around him. Maybe you could say that's because he does his best as a number one option with no one else around him. That's when his statistical output's going to be the best. But you talked about that James Harden year earlier. They did combine for the most points ever by a scoring duo. Because that was the year James Harden averaged 36. Russell Westbrook still averaged 27 that year, even next to James Harden. So
And what did he do versus the Lakers though? Like I actually have to look that up.
I'd have to look it up too.
I remember James Harden specifically was amazing in that series. The problem is I don't want to hate on Russ. I love Russ. But what was his peak? What was his peak scoring wise? Like 45% from the field. I understand like now it's a very more analytical NBA versus like back then. Like if you could just get a bucket and you could play defense. And he was one of the few point guards who did play defense, who did show effort and had that dog in him. I mean, you talk about, Russell Westbrook, but so many turnovers per game. I mean, we're talking about like in playoff series, he'd average like 5 turnovers a game, which is fine if you're like even like a Cade Cunningham and you could really score the ball and it's not the least efficient thing ever. And I get that he didn't have help, but it spoke volumes when he joined the Lakers and he couldn't contribute because I understand he is best as number one, but if you can't adapt your game a little bit to play with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, I think just it's a little bit of a problem. Especially because you're a point guard, you're supposed to make your teammates better.
We say that. But also, there have been many players that haven't been able to adapt to playing next to LeBron James. They just happen to get traded, and then the team gets successful because they put better players next to LeBron James.
But
LeBron's not the easiest guy in the world to play next to. He does have a specific archetype of guys that work really well.
But you know who won a championship with LeBron James? My number 7, Dwight Howard. He was able to go into that role. Now, was it a big role? No. But
Dwight Howard was winning that championship with Kyle Kuzma and Rajon Rondo off the bench. But, I will give you credit for that. He did win
Russ had AD. Russ could have elevated AD, and I specifically think he didn't.
AD's not the type that's going to get type of guy that's going to get elevated by a Russ. Dwight Howard is the guy that's going to get elevated by. But you know what? You know how fun that would be? Those two playing together. That would have been absolutely incredible.
No, that would have been incredible.
But no, all due respect to Dwight Howard, I think he is another guy that gets kind of looked down on because he was a defensive guy and the success he had never manifested into a championship. A lot of people look at that 2009 finals as being kind of just a Lakers pretty dominant or pretty assertive victory. The Magic definitely had a chance to win that series. Dwight himself did miss a couple free throws down the stretch in a clutch. I believe it was game 5. No, game 4 of that series when they had the chance to tie it 2-2. But overall, both incredible physical freaks of nature, both guys that were probably some of the most exciting guys at their position to watch during their time. And the only reason I have Russell Westbrook higher is because, I mean, you think about it, Russ not only did what he did output-wise, statistically, his contribution to winning and his contribution to the team being good, in spite of the fact that their best player left them without them getting anything in return, is the reason why the Thunder are good now. Because Paul George doesn't come to OKC if Russ doesn't have the season he has in 2016-17. He doesn't want to go to OKC if he doesn't have that season, doesn't sign an extension. That doesn't incentivize the Clippers to trade for him. Thunder never get Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and they never get all these picks. They never are able to draft J-Dub. None of this happens without Russ.
I mean, I love Russ, and that's why I have him 8. Like, because he, like, of all the other people on this list, Russ peaked the highest. I mean, you talk about his MVP season, it was amazing. In 2015, he did play amazing. So it's all credit to him. When he is a number 1, they still are a good team. It's just, I mean, yeah, like I said, the rest of these guys on this list as a number 1 options are not leading their team to championships or even to the finals. And debatably the conference finals, maybe 1 or 2 times. But yeah, we can go ahead and get into that.
Yeah.
At number 9, I have Carmelo Anthony.
I also have Carmelo Anthony.
Just amazing scorer. Unfortunately, couldn't really do too much else. Like, I actually think Carmelo is one of those guys who wouldn't do as well in today's NBA because that is what is required. Like, I personally feel like defenses are more complex, but I want to give Melo credit. One of the greatest scorers of all time. You talk about games about a bucket, and he was about getting a bucket.
Yeah. I mean, Carmelo Anthony is one of those guys that probably would have been really remembered if he had played in a little bit of an earlier era. No, that actually sounds disrespectful. I was going to say he'd be remembered as an Adrian Dantley or an Alex English, and no disrespect to those guys, but I feel like modern fans just don't think of them that much. But no, Carmelo Anthony is an incredible scoring talent who did everything that he was meant to do. He just couldn't do anything more. And that's okay. Yeah. You know, like, he wasn't this distributor. He wasn't even, some people are going to hate me for this, he wasn't even Jason Tatum, because I think Jason Tatum is the new and improved version of Carmelo Anthony in a lot of ways.
I think Melo's still better at scoring than Tatum, but Tatum could do the little thing.
But Tatum does does the other things, and he is more efficient, not necessarily because he's better at scoring, but because he takes smarter shots. Yeah. And the fact of the matter is Carmelo Anthony is going to have some of the most memorable moments that New York Knicks fans and Denver Nuggets fans have ever experienced in their life, but there's a reason number 15 is going to be retired for a different guy at the end of his career.
Which is crazy, but I agree with you. Hey, at number 10, I have Tony Parker.
At number 10, I have Andre Iguodala.
Okay, this is kind of interesting. Do you think why? Okay, I want to hear this.
I think they're very similar. I've got to see where I do have Tony Parker pretty low, actually, relatively speaking.
What?
But it's no disrespect to Tony Parker. I feel like I value championships, but Tony Parker was arguably, he won a Finals MVP, but he was the second best player or third best player on that team a lot of the time. Iggy was too, but he was that guy in Philly, and we got to see that. And maybe that's a detriment to Tony Parker that we didn't get to see him with his own team, but we did get to see Iguodala with his own team in Philly. He did look super impressive, and then he contributed to 4 championships as well. And I guess my logic for that, I think Andre Iguodala played a more important role for the Golden State Warriors than Tony Parker played for the San Antonio Spurs.
Tony Parker was the number 2 scoring option. Tony Parker
not always. Manu
Finals
Ginobili
MVP.
was the number 2, and then Kawhi Leonard won it in 2014, the Finals MVP. So then there was a point where other guys overtook him, and the Spurs were more about team basketball, right?
Kawhi is fair. Manu, I think Tony Parker was always
Andre Iguodala for a period of time drew the most difficult wing defensive assignment of anybody on that team, and sometimes a guard too, and he was willing to take that on. Andre Iguodala, I give 100% credit for too, that he was a guy who came in as a 20-plus point per game scorer, 22 point per game scorer, whatever he was, a guy who was kind of a pseudo LeBron. Like, we want to talk about the closest.
Oh my God. Pseudo LeBron is insane.
The closest little. No. We want to talk about the guy that was the closest to a LeBron mold that we've seen. Andre Iguodala is definitely in that conversation. And I'd say Andre Iguodala, though not as good as LeBron James, can definitely do a lot of the things that LeBron James can do, especially in his prime, from a physical perspective, from a passing perspective, from a defensive perspective, from a scoring perspective, right? So when you want to talk about him taking that hit to come play with the Golden State Warriors, I respect that so much. I respect him coming and playing underneath a Steph Curry and a Klay Thompson, two guys who, especially for Klay, were not looked at as these guys that were supposed to be the number 1 and 2 scoring options based on their play styles. And he said, I'm going to come in and I'm going to believe in this team, and I'm going to take a pay cut to come play for this team eventually, right? I give him 100% credit for that. I think he's a huge reason for the Warriors' success, and you can call it bias, you can call it whatever. I think Andre Iguodala is the greatest role player of this generation of guys, if you want to even call him that, which I would not.
You know what? Go ahead. Call him that, because Tony Parker's not a role player. Tony Parker's a star. 6-time All-Star. Iggy was a 1-time All-Star. By the way, the one time he won an All-Star, or he made the All-Star game, he averaged 12 points per game. So, I don't know. Calling him a pseudo LeBron James, I think is insane. I think Tony Parker won a Finals MVP just like Iggy, except Tony Parker's, I believe, was more impressive. I couldn't tell you the stats of his, but Iggy had one of the least impressive Finals MVPs of all time. And Tony Parker, I'm just going to give credit to. 6-time All-Star. He was consistently a top point guard in the NBA, and he did win those championships. In every single championship, he played a bigger role than Andre Iguodala. I don't have Iggy in my top 14, I believe. Let me check real quick. I'd had him as an honorable mention. I didn't even have him as that. But I did think about him when I was ranking that. When you talk about the top 14, you talk about stars. I mean, you just put Iggy right under Carmelo Anthony. Right under him, which is pretty insane. I
sure did. A guy that never made the conference finals versus a guy that won 4 NBA finals.
He had Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, for some of them, Kevin Durant. That's a lot of help. For someone who half of his career averaged less than double digits points in the 2000s century is insane.
Of everyone on Golden State, with the game on the line, the Martians got the death beam pointed at Earth. Who do I want taking the last shot? I want Iguodala.
We're using terrible takes and gimmicks.
You were sucking off Max Kellerman the last time we recorded.
Because he's an entertaining dude, but that was the stupidest take ever.
He was entertaining?
There's a reason that's so funny.
You said when he talks about sports, I'll quote you exactly. When he talks about sports, no homo, I'm in love. That's what you said.
Not because he's saying the things that are right. It's a good.
No. Run the tape.
Did I say that he was correct and he's one of the most correct guys ever? No. There's a reason that he went out and said that for first take, he had to do the hot takes because Stephen A wasn't trying to do that because he wanted to be right.
Well, I'm glad that for once he got to give his own real opinion.
You know what? You are the Max Kellerman of this podcast because you're the one saying the crazy things to try and be different. I'm giving the right opinion.
Listen. You think that's some sort of an insult? I will take the exaggerated swagger of a 40-year-old white man. I will take that. I will 100% take that and run with that.
At pick 11, I have Pau Gasol.
At pick 11, I have Drew Holiday.
I'm really not mad at it because honestly, I did debate having Drew Holiday this high, but I chose not to. I'm not even sure if I had him on my list, but Pau Gasol, large contribution to 2 championships. He was like a 6-time All-Star, could score the ball, could rebound. I'm just going to respect Pau because even though I love what Kobe did for the championships, Pau being that number 2 was so important. And that's just something that Drew, I love Drew, but Drew was also low-key a playoff dropper. It's just that he was such a good defender and playmaker, and he was like, unfortunately, his prime was kind of wasted on the Pelicans, but I like Pau Gasol.
I mean, yeah, no, I love Pau too. He's just a couple spots below this for me, but Drew Holiday is one of those guys that in the modern NBA is exactly what you need. A guy that can hit 3-pointers from the corner at a 45% clip, a guy that can guard the other team's best perimeter player consistently and completely shut them down, right? Now, Drew Holiday, I mean, he's not the most efficient offensive player in the playoffs. I'll tell you that 100%. But everything that he gives, especially defensively, there was a point in time where you could argue he was the best two-way player in the NBA, and that's with his offensive downsides because he's that good defensively. It honestly is criminal that because of his role in a way and because of his scoring capability in a way, he never won a Defensive Player of the Year because there were certainly years where he was the best defensive player in the NBA, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate that take at all. I'll respect Drew Holiday. He's one of the few non-Hawks players I have a jersey of, so I don't want to get in that argument too much. But at number 12, I'll be surprised if you have him much lower because this guy is a dog. I have Amari Stoudemire.
You know, sometimes
this is about to be so bad when he doesn't just say the player.
Sometimes you have to. I'm gonna look you guys in the eye real quick.
It's gonna be like Monte Ellis.
Sometimes you have to look at a player's accomplishments. Sometimes you have to look at
scarecrows,
finals MVPs or finals appearances or playoff wins, things that people will say matters. But when it pertains to greatness, right? Individual greatness, I'm going to talk about a guy that's knocking on the door of top 10 points all time. I'm going to talk about a guy.
Stop. No, we're not doing this.
About a guy.
Okay, hold on. Actually, Kim, I'm not even kidding. Real quick, I need to fucking pee. Like, I swear to God, I need to pee. But no, we can't do this.
You wouldn't judge Reggie Miller for running into Michael Jordan every year in the playoffs. You wouldn't judge James Harden or Chris Paul for running into Steph Curry every year in the playoffs. So why would you judge a guy that had to go through LeBron every year? Let's give him his flowers.
Because let's
have DeMar DeRozan at 12.
Because if they would have played like Keldon Johnson against LeBron James, I would have blamed him. I'm gonna be perfectly honest here. At number 12. I was debating I didn't even have him on my list, but I was actually debating having either Amari Stoudemire or Kyle Lowry. Kyle Lowry is a better basketball player
over DeMar DeRozan? Okay.
Yes.
Which one got traded for Kawhi Leonard?
Which one won the chip? Which one contributed?
With Kawhi Leonard.
Every time Kyle Lowry left the floor in the playoffs on the Raptors, the Cleveland Cavaliers would go on a huge run because it'd be led by DeMar DeRozan, the playoff dropper, the ultimate playoff dropper. He saw LeBron James. He saw the side of him and shit his pants.
Kawhi Leonard has a finals MVP with the Spurs. Why don't you ask Spurs fans who they like more?
Where's DeMar DeRozan? By the way, DeMar DeRozan was a Spur. Where's his finals MVP? Oh, yeah.
Where's his finals MVP? He's about to crack top 10 on the scoring list.
He is.
He doesn't need to find. He's about to score more points all time than Shaq.
I respect DeMar DeRozan's ability to stay healthy and consistently hit that mid-range in the regular season.
A Kevin Durant that never joined the Warriors? Is that DeMar DeRozan?
No, that's not what we're doing. Oh, yeah, you're laughing. You think this is funny. This is not funny. Kyle Lowry is a better player all time than DeMar DeRozan. And especially Amari Stoudemire, who, by the way, through like 15 games, maybe it wasn't 15, but it was through a ton of games when the Suns made the conference finals in 2005, Amari Stoudemire averaged 30 points per game. DeMar DeRozan could never do that. And Amari Stoudemire was efficient. And I get that he was playing with Steve Nash, but guess what? Amari was an all-star and it was an all-NBA type of player when he wasn't with Steve Nash in the late Phoenix Suns era.
You want to rewind that really quick? He was playing with a 2-time MVP and he was the second best player on the team and he couldn't deliver a championship.
He averaged 30 points per game. He averaged 33 against Tim Duncan. He averaged 33 points per game in that series versus Tim Duncan. Steve Nash played amazing as well.
Is Tim Duncan as good as LeBron?
you're not doing this. Because it's not like DeMar DeRozan and LeBron were fighting. It's not like they were battling it out. Not only did DeMar suck, they weren't winning games. More like DeMar, I hear it, the less I like it. It's the stupid
You couldn't even say it. You couldn't even get it out in
it's
one
the Will
sentence.
Ferrell and Drake commercial. We don't mess. I mean, I'm cool with DeMar DeRozan. I don't hate him, but like, let's not put him in these all-time talks like he isn't a playoff dropper, like he isn't just this mid-range merchant. Let's be real. He would have thrived in like the 90s. It's a different NBA. There's a reason that he's always losing. I get he's on the Sacramento Kings. He's still losing. I get he was on the Chicago Bulls. He was still losing.
So most of NBA history, he would have been Clyde Drexler or Dominique
Amari
Wilkins.
Stoudemire is the better player. Amari Stoudemire is easily the better player. Everyone remember Amari Stoudemire. Yes.
Then tell me why I don't think that.
Because I don't know. I think you just weren't thinking when you made this list.
Oh, I just wasn't thinking.
Yeah, I think you weren't. Yeah, at number 13, I don't even want to talk about it even more. At number 13, I have Blake Griffin.
At number 13, I have Pau Gasol.
Okay, so I respect Pau only being a couple spots lower. And Blake Griffin, amazing player. I mean, we're talking about not only with Chris Paul, but without Chris Paul. Like, Detroit Pistons, Blake, when I was looking back at the stats, I had to remember, wow, Blake averaged 24.5 points without, like, who was their point guard at the time? Like, maybe Reggie Jackson? I don't even think it was
Reggie
him.
Jackson. I don't know. I think it was him, actually.
But even with Reggie, for him to do that and then average still like a career high in assists per game, over 6, and obviously he wasn't the worst defender. Like, he led the Pistons to the playoffs, which is something only Cade Cunningham could do and Isaiah Thomas can do. So like, I'll respect Blake, not to put him any higher, but he was a good player.
Absolutely, Blake Griffin, great player. I got Pau Gasol. You already talked about him. Just what else can you say? Incredible second option next to Kobe Bryant, won 2 championships. Big reason why the city of LA is at 17 instead of 15 right now. No, 100% respect Pau Gasol.
Yeah. And number 14, I have Drew Holiday.
Number 14, I have Chris Bosh.
Okay. So both players that contributed to 2 championships each. Obviously Drew Holiday, you already gave credit to, but yeah, one of the best two-way players ever. Just elevates his teammates. And then Chris Bosh.
I mean, yeah, Chris Bosh often gets looked down upon a little bit because of his time with the Miami Heat. A lot of people noted that. He's an incredible player. He was an incredible player on the Raptors, putting up 24 and 11 a game. And when he came to the Miami Heat, there was a lot of games that he had where he had big moments. A lot of people forget, but in that same game where, Ray Allen hit the 3 to send the game to overtime. Chris Bosh also had an incredible block. He got the board. He also had an incredible block later in that game. I believe it was in overtime to help them win the game. It was a block on Danny Green where he had a shot to tie the game. Chris Bosh blocked him in the corner, won them the game, sent him to game 7. Chris Bosh is a big-time player. He makes big-time plays. And at the end of the day, I think he is not just as important as LeBron and Dwayne Wade, but he is very important to that big 3. That big 3 beat a lot of great teams, and that is in no small part due to Chris Bosh doing exactly what was needed. When you really talk about the guy that was closest to Kevin Garnett in a lot of ways of that era, in terms of power forward, Chris Bosh is right there. And I think he deserves respect for that. So
yeah, I speak all NBA player for sure.
Yeah.
So that's the list. My honorable mentions are going to be Kyle Lowry. It's going to be Derrick Rose. Unfortunately, a very short peak. Yao Ming, another short peak, but like he was an all-star every single season he played in the NBA. And I would have actually had him ranked if he just was like better in the playoffs. Like he kind of was a playoff dropper too, but he was pretty young. And then my last honorable mention is LaMarcus Aldridge. You just talk about consistent. You talk about a guy who actually played just as well in the playoffs than he did in the regular season. It was always like a 22-point per game guy.
No, good honorable mentions. There were so many great guys in this 2000s era. This era really defined the NBA. My honorable mentions are Kevin Love, one of the most underrated rebounders of all time, and then comes and wins a championship with LeBron in 2016. Big part of those 4 championship runs. Just an incredible locker room guy, as well as being one of the most underrated stat sheet stuffers that we've ever seen. Tony Parker at 16, big contributor to a lot of championships. I have lower than you because I think I really believe Tim Duncan was that good. Derrick Rose at 17, unfortunately, we never got to see more of him. Youngest MVP ever. We all know the story. At 18, Kyle Lowry, absolutely, solid point guard, just on that tier below a Chris Paul kind of guy, but exactly what you want out of a pass first kind of point guard. Found his home in Toronto and made the most of it. And then Amari Stoudemire at 19. I agree with you. Great player. Just not quite as high on him as some of these other guys. You guys let me know in the comments if I'm just unfamiliar with Amari's game, but I would have him at 19 in this redraft.
All right, that's the redraft. Last time we did 2010s. Next time we'll do 1990s. We'll have players like a Tim Duncan, like a Kobe Bryant. It'll be really fun. It'll be really fun to debate, especially because like some of these guys we saw at the very end of their peak, and some of them we didn't really watch at all. So it'll be a lot of fun. If you guys enjoyed and made it this far, if you could just like the video and subscribe, that'd be amazing. We finally hit 1,000. Now it's road to like 10,000. Let's go.
Yeah,
I feel like it'll get way faster. And then comment, what do you guys think we got most wrong, most right? Just let us know. And
Yeah.
yeah,
See you in the next one. We're gonna do that. We're gonna chud. We're gonna